right. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday on this April 3rd already. Can you believe it's already April 3rd? Wow. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And today I'm joined by some great guests, a power couple, if you will. And let me just introduce them. President and founder of the Power of One Self-Defense with over 1,500 students in Southern California, spread across 5 studios. Colin Van Deusens, a 9th degree black belt in American Kempo and former head coach for Chuck Norris's Los Angeles Stars World Combat League team, started teaching in Long Beach in 1992 after meeting his future wife, Tara, 11-time NBL and NASCA World Fighting Champion and first female American Irish Grand Champion. Together in 1998, they opened their now headquarters located in Long Beach, California, with 475 active students. While martial arts is their passion, they also run a nonprofit that has built schools with ongoing teacher and student sponsorship in remote regions of Nepal, with another project soon starting in Africa. With additional businesses in retail and investment properties, their goal has always been to work hard and play hard with multiple mini retirements throughout the year. Their biggest achievement has been to find balance in work, relationship, and family while taking many amazing trips around the world. Welcome to the show, guys.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
This is exciting. I always love when I get to have a couple on here that I can highlight and talk about, how you guys work together in one of the toughest industries, I think, that there is out there. But also, I can't wait for you guys to tell everybody about some of your traveling, because one of the things that I love most is watching your social media and just seeing where you guys are in the world. I mean, you always got something going. One day you're on a soccer field, and another one you're in a mountain, top beautiful views. So let's start it off. And I don't know who wants to go first, but why don't we just start? Because a lot of people that are watching will be martial arts fans or students of yours, and maybe they don't know a lot of the history. So who wants to start with the background of how you got involved in martial arts?
Go ahead.
Well, for me, it was pretty, what's the word? Common. I was 4 and I saw the movie The Karate Kid, and I told my mom I wanted to do that. And she said, "What, movies or karate?" And I said, "Both." So she was a young teenage mother and happy to get me involved in martial arts. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. I got into competition, and I did do some television and acting, but my love was competition. So that eventually brought me from Canada to California, where I ended up meeting my future husband. And that was kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yep. She became enamored with me and then hasn't looked back.
Well, I love it. I love that, we're probably pretty close to the same age, because that Karate Kid era spawned a lot of martial artists, and before our time, it was Bruce Lee. And then after our time, it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And there's always these different things that kind of those catalysts that set people forward on their journey of martial arts. Now, you were 4 when you started, so you don't really remember life too much before martial arts.
I absolutely don't. I do remember in a lot of my earlier systems, because I have a few different black belts, there was not a lot of girls, especially my first system. There was only my female doctor. And that's definitely one of the things that I like to look back and notice the difference, because we probably have over 50% of our students, probably across the board, but definitely at our headquarters, are female. So there's been a huge shift as far as that's concerned compared to when I first began.
Well, when they have a strong female mentor to look up to, it makes a lot of girls want to get involved, right? And I think that's sometimes what might be lacking in schools that are run by predominantly men, is they don't have those female role models. So I just think that's awesome, and that's a great stat to kind of look at with your school. Colin, how did you get involved? How did you get started with martial arts?
Well, I had kind of an interesting childhood, probably not unlike millions of other people around the world, but the challenge with either suffering from some, looking back on it, either low confidence or low self-esteem, just through a series of different events that took place in my childhood, between parents getting divorced and not kind of having that solid male role model every day in the morning to, pat me on the back or just keep me in check when I was doing stupid things. So consequently, I got in a lot of fights when I was young. And I think it was really, again, looking back on it, more of a kind of a self-defense mechanism that I used to try to prevent people from, if I thought they were going to laugh at me or make fun of me, I would just beat them up before they got a chance to do it. So they had something else to think about. And of course, obviously it is, in hindsight, it's always 2020. And those were all just really my own issues and really not any of theirs. But my mother obviously saw a pattern, and you end up in the principal's office, or you end up getting called to be picked up from school enough times. And fortunately, my mom was smart enough to put some intervention in there. And she had a friend that she worked with who knew a guy who was a cop during the day and ran a karate studio at night. And so gave him the number, and we showed up at the studio one day. And my first instructor was 6'4", 240 pounds or so. I may not be exactly on that part of it, but pretty close. And I think I saw the guy smile maybe twice in my whole entire life. So I was scared to death right from the beginning, but I also was, pretty intrigued by it, because I think the first time I kicked somebody in the head, I got kind of like a nod and I don't remember if it was a high five, but at least metaphorically, to say good job. And I thought, wow, last time I did that, I got sent to the principal's office. I'm getting congratulated for doing so. So I found an outlet for that extra, I don't know, frustration or whatever it was I was going through. And I never got in any fights after that, because I was finding an outlet to pull that out on the mat. So that's kind of how it got going. And inspirations, of course, of that era, Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee were always things that were you see in the movies or magazine covers, and you kind of, I think a lot of young boys or girls at the time kind of looked at that stuff as a source of inspiration. And it's that mystery or that wow about what it must be like to be a black belt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know about you, but when I first earned my black belt, I was 16, and I thought I was gonna levitate into the karate studio once I earned it. Because you know what I mean? It's the things you make up in your mind about what a black belt really is when you're a kid.
Or maybe you were going to have the glow.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You want to have the glow. How old were you when you started?
About 10 years old.
About 10. Okay. Nice. So, I mean, you both came up as children in the martial arts, and obviously, since you didn't know each other then, you didn't really train necessarily. Talk about the differences in your training. Now you predominantly practice Kempo karate. Is that correct?
The base system, yep.
The base system, yeah. It's pretty much more of a mixed martial art, but the base system is American Kempo.
Right. I think we're all kind of in that same boat, right? Like we all have the base, but then we have all these additions that we brought into our school. But, Tara, how was your training coming up, since you were 4, right? I mean, how was it coming up as a kid? Tell us about that. Just some of your memories of training in martial arts.
Wow. So, I first started in a rec center. It was a local rec center, and they actually operated out of several, but I just remember that it was down in the basement, and it was concrete floor. It was a traditional Shotokan. It was actually Butokan. So it was similar to Shotokan karate. Mm-hmm. And, knuckle push-ups on the concrete, you name it. It was a little old school. Again, not many kids, not many females whatsoever. But once I started getting involved in the competition aspect and I wanted to become a fighter, I started traveling to a different part of town, about an hour away in East Vancouver. And, they were the fighters. Let's just say East Van in Vancouver is not dissimilar to maybe East Los Angeles or something like that. So there was a bunch of different eclectic groups. And I don't even know how much to say in regards to that. A lot of them are in different places in life at this point, but I had an awesome childhood experience. They all became like uncles and protectors in that sense. But we just traveled around competing every weekend, every month, wherever we could go. Seattle, Vancouver, Tacoma, Oregon, fighting wherever we could.
And when did you start competing? At what age did you start competing pretty regularly?
I was 7 when I did my first competition. I was 11, I think, when I first hit the NBLs. And again, there wasn't many Canadians there. So there was like myself and one other gentleman, Bill Hunter, actually, who stepped in and coached me at 1:00 in the morning in New Orleans. But it wasn't until I was 17 that I moved to California that I really started to compete more on the circuit. And that's when I got picked up and sponsored and started traveling with, Richard Plowden and Garth Binns and some great teams that were on the circuit at that time, and got to start competing a little bit more. Met this guy at a tournament, and that was the end of that.
So did you stop competing? You didn't stop competing when you met, though.
Oh no, that was actually probably the beginning of when I really started to do well. I won my division often, but it wasn't until after I started training with Colin, mindset wise, he was all into this NLP, neuro linguistics programming, and he did a great job. There was myself, there was Raymond Daniels, there was Mike P, there was all kinds of us back in the day that were just competing often and just starting to win. And I think that really helped, not to mention the angles in American Kempo really helped take my game to the next level, where I could beat the people that were a foot bigger than me or faster with their kicks, or, all that type of stuff. Cause it kind of brought in a new element to both the mental and physical aspects of my fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So you came up from a very traditional background, Japanese style, hard style, concrete floors, the whole bit. Colin, what was your training like? Was it similar to that, or what was your base? What did you start in?
Yeah, originally it was Shaolin Kempo, another different form of Kempo. I grew up on the East Coast in Vermont, and my first instructor had about, 15 or 20 years, I don't know exactly at the time, experience in some different systems, some traditional Japanese systems, and also Kempo under like Al Tracy and Nick Serio. I think he had some training with as well. So it was kind of an eclectic blend by the time he ended up joining the organization that he was with. It was under Fred Villari at the time. He was having a hard time trying to make a living doing martial arts, because it was taught not unlike the way my wife's was back in the day. I mean, I think really a lot of studios were kind of similar in that sense. If you're coming out of the 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever you're getting in the 80s was going to be the same thing. We had a 2-story building that our dojo was in. The top floor was hardwood floors, and same type of thing down in the basement, concrete. There was a trap door that led down to the downstairs, which was it was literally like going into a dungeon, and they used it to the best of their ability to try to torment and scare the hell out of whoever was going down there. There were just a lot of like psychological type things that in hindsight, you'd be arrested today probably for doing some of the stuff that they did, or at least, there would be some lawsuits. But looking back on it, there were some of those things that made you face some fears that you probably wouldn't have otherwise faced unless you were put in those type of positions. And, but just same thing, knuckle push-ups on concrete, and the kind of very stern looking type of atmosphere in class that didn't make you want to smile, laugh, or have a whole lot of fun. But if you were there to learn, you were definitely going to learn, and usually it was through some pain and suffering.
The passion level was definitely different back in those days. The only people that stuck around were those that really loved some aspect of it.
Yeah,
right, for sure.
And different goals, I think, as well. And I was pretty competitive when I was a kid, or I've just been pretty competitive in life, and it was just to see other kids or younger people come into the studio, which there weren't very many at the time. Most weren't adults, but to see one show up for a class or two and then I'd never see him again, I just vowed that wasn't going to be me. So that's, as with everybody, kind of a white belt ends up becoming a black belt just by not quitting, right? So
right.
Yeah, how it worked out. Yep. But I don't know if that answered the question about the up part of it, but
yeah, it gets us started. Now, were you heavy into competition as well? I mean, you guys met at a tournament, so was competition a big part of your upbringing in martial arts?
It wasn't huge from when I was a youth. I did compete, but it wasn't something that I was really focused on. I didn't. I could have taken it or left it. As I got older, though, and when I moved to California, it was about a month after I graduated from high school. And I'd known most of the big name people that I'd ever seen on a cover of a martial arts magazine tended to live in California.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't others elsewhere, but it seemed like this was the hotbed for martial arts. And so anyways, ended up in California, started training at a school, which fortuitously there was it happened to be my instructor's, one of his first instructors, named Bob Perry, which was an Ed Parker black belt, and ended up at another studio that what the gentleman that was teaching was my current instructor's student as well, but he was a international champion. His name was Dave Brock, and he'd had a significant amount of success in tournament competition. So being in that school environment, I tended to then start getting more active in competition. Then, one thing led to another, and pretty much every weekend we were at a tournament. Sometimes we'd compete on a Saturday and then go to another tournament on a Sunday, type of thing, but did that for years.
Yeah.
How to try to make that rent money.
Yeah, right.
Right. Well, hey guys, listen, we're building up quite the audience today. People that are watching right now, if you're watching it live, please feel free to comment. Let us know if you have any questions that you would like to ask either one or myself. But please comment. Let us know that you're here. And sometimes if you're in a certain platform, it might not register your name. So if you could post your name in the comment as well and what your question might be, that would be great. Just in case you have anything that you want to ask. But so you guys were both very competitive, it sounds like towards the latter part, teen to young adulthood, and you both moved to California. Before we start talking about that, Terry, you grew up in Canada, and Colin, you grew up in Vermont. Tell us a little bit more about, just kind of growing up where you did and what was going on at that time in your life other than martial arts.
Well, I grew up, as I mentioned, just outside a small suburb outside of Vancouver, and called Coquitlam. Throughout my teen years, although I was still competing from time to time, I was very active in school sports, basketball, soccer. I was pretty focused on going to college with some type of sport scholarship. And it was due to that when I came down one summer to train, actually close to your neck of the woods in Malibu there, I'd come down and train with Kurt Lampson and Joey Escobar there in Malibu, that I just decided not to go home. So I stayed here for my senior year. And the culture shock was pretty drastic from Canadian high school to high school in Malibu. But sports was my full-time passion, specifically basketball.
So what drew you specifically to Malibu? Was it because of the sports?
No, remember I mentioned I started karate because I told my mother I wanted to do both karate and acting when I saw the Karate Kid one. So I did have I did a lot of commercials, just under 100 commercials. And one of the production companies and gentlemen that I did a lot of those commercials from, him and his family lived in Malibu. So at a certain point when I outgrew the Barbie commercials, he became my first sponsor. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, I had a young teenage mother who worked 3 jobs so that I could train and compete and do all my sports. But he helped sponsor me to my first NBL event. So I moved in with them and kind of helped with the kids a little bit. And yeah.
And you said there's a huge culture shock. What was the biggest difference?
Well, in Canada in high school, I don't know. It just seemed like high school. We're just wearing regular clothes, driving regular cars. Malibu High, I was, there was Mel Gibson's daughter. There was kids that had already had nose jobs and boob jobs and had different cars for the different days of the week. And the whole party scene was different. The whole, it was very different from Canada.
Yeah. And so now, Colin, you grew up in Vermont.
Yep.
What was going on in your life as a young child, above and beyond martial arts? What other activities and what else were you into back then?
I kind of had a partly similar experience with regard to sports as my wife did. And we wasn't necessarily soccer, basketball, but gymnastics, diving, springboard diving, and baseball. I played for a number of years, did track and field, cross country, that type of stuff in competing. But I, oddly enough, competitively, and I say competitively, we toured around, did a bunch of shows, breakdancing back in the days, being right next door to New York, all of the trickle down effects of that whole hip hop revolution when it first started out, what spilled into Vermont pretty quick because we were so close to them. And, ended up, just like I said, touring around, getting paid. I used to teach private lessons to grown men that wanted to learn how to break dance. And
Wow.
yeah, that was an interesting time of life. But the other one was a hobby that I think a few of my friends, actually quite a few of my friends, ended up spending a significant amount, probably way more than we should have been, which was playing war games. And no, it's not necessarily, for us, it was a game, but obviously we understand the realities of war is nothing like that. But yeah, we did stuff prior to the paintball revolution and the airsoft stuff with pellet guns, BB guns, and all that other stuff, things that probably would make any parent's skin crawl. That's pretty much what did it for our parents. But anyways, those types of things, that the adrenaline rushes of going out into the forest and trying to shoot one of your friends was a common occurrence for us. Just a Vermont mentality back then is a lot of people, the whole state shut down for 2 weeks every year to hunt. So there was a lot of people out in the woods and just hunting in general and or using guns. It was a lot more widely accepted than it is in out here at where we're at now, right? It was just you could walk through town with 2 guns under each arm and nobody would even bat an eye at you. So yeah, different time, different era, but those were some of the ways that I spent my youth.
Yeah. Well, we said we wouldn't talk about politics, but
true enough.
We'll stay away from it. We'll stay away from it.
No
First of all, I never knew that about you, the breakdancing. I think I just think that's such like a cool, fun fact to learn about you, because as soon as, when we start talking about like the Karate Kid era, there were a lot of cool movies that came out back then. And, one of my favorite movies was Breakin' back in the day. And that was just such an awesome movie. And so when you started talking about breakdancing, like I'm watching like Turbo and Ozone doing the dance and doing their thing. But yeah, so much stuff about sports from both of you. It's no wonder that, all of your children have become such, amazing athletes and gone on to do, play sports. It seems like they played sports their entire life. So there's a heavy emphasis for you guys there. Now, you met in California at a tournament. Is that right?
Yes, it was interesting. We met because he invited me to his tournament. He was holding a tournament, and it was some small tournament, and I was young. And
hey, wait a minute. It wasn't that small.
It was some small tournament in this little rec center, but it was called The Power of One. And my favorite book since I was 12 years old was The Power of One. It changed my life, everything about The Power of One. So, and I was actually teaching out of Pepperdine at the time. So I took a couple of my students. I was going to Pepperdine, but I was also teaching. So I took a couple of students to the tournament, and that was the only reason I went, was because of the name. And then, he chased me.
That wasn't the only reason why she went. That's the story she tried.
That was the only reason I went.
I love it. See, I can only get this kind of interview with a couple that will banter back and forth with each other. I love it. So you guys met at this small little tournament at a rec center. Interestingly enough, I think, Terry, you said you started at a rec center as well. Your martial arts was that. I started in a rec center. I think a lot of people that I came up with, started at the rec center. That's how I started my martial arts school. I started in a rec center. So I figure, well, if I'm going to go start my school, I started out in the rec center, and we just kind of went from there. I actually, the way that I built my school, or the very first income generator that I did as opening a school, was hosting a tournament and telling all my friends, look, I'm going to open a school, so you guys got to support this tournament and come and compete. I remember I had the biggest tournament that I ever had, and it was probably, I don't know, a couple hundred people. But back then it was big for me, and I was like, wow, cool. I never did a big tournament again.
Yeah, it was funny. It was the first time I'd ever seen monkey style. There was somebody who fought monkey style at his tournament. I don't know where they came from. I never saw them again, but yeah.
So you guys hit it off at a tournament. You met, right? Of course, we could say the rest is history, but let's talk about that history a little bit more. Where did this relationship just kind of blossom right away and continue from there? Or was there a little more chase?
There was definitely more chase. I was younger, and I was, I was kind of focused on me, and I would say there was definitely a little bit more chase, but it did take off pretty quick. We just started. I was still living in Malibu, so he was in Long Beach, so it was 2 hours apart, and I was still going to school, and we spoke on the phone a lot. We just talked on the phone, and then eventually we started going to tournaments a lot together, and it did really actually happen pretty quick. I think he proposed really fast, and then I made him wait more.
Good for you.
Back in the day when I would be able to page her.
Yes.
Pager, right?
Hey, call me.
I love it. We used to come up with our own little messages, with all the make words out of the numbers on
Yes.
pagers back in the day. Now, so when you moved here to Malibu from Canada, you never went back.
I never went back. So I used to come for the summers, and I would train and I would surf because I fell in love with surfing. And again, I was getting to train both with Kurt Lampson and Joey Esper. I should mention, throughout this point or before this point, I was training at a new studio for the last 5 years, or from the time I was 11 to 16 in Canada, Kelly's Academy of Taekwondo. And there was more girls there. So that part was starting to change already before I moved down. Mm-hmm. But so I used to come in the summers, and this summer before my senior year, I couldn't see myself going back to Canada. It was just a variety of reasons, but mostly I just knew that to get to the next level in whatever aspect, whether it was sports, basketball, soccer, or karate, I needed to be somewhere where it was more competitive, like mm-hmm. where everybody was, striving to get to the top, which is funny because now I kind of miss low key the kind of relaxing vibes back in Canada. But anyway, so I just called my mom and I said I wasn't coming home. And then I walked into Malibu High and registered.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what were your goals as far as like when you were going to go to college or a career? Were you planning to be an athlete, or did you have the backup plan of I'm going to go to school to get a degree in X?
100%. I started going to school. I was going to become a sports medicine doctor. And obviously I was there at Pepperdine. And so they had a little bit more money. In my first year, we got to dissect a cadaver, and it was a older gentleman. And, I knew right away that the medicine field wasn't for me. So, and it was right when I started competing again. I was already dating with Colin when I made the decision that I need to step back a little bit before I continue on in school, because I didn't really know what I want to do. I was kind of aimless at this point. So I got back into competition, and that's when I got picked up by Richard Plowden first with SES, and
Full Contact was there too.
Oh, Full Contact first. Yeah. Full Contact local here in California, and then SES. And then, so we were doing a lot of travel, and I was kind of able to just focus on fighting for a bit. And I wasn't thinking long-term other than, gain some world championships.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Colin? Did you have plans of going to college, going to school, and having a specific career? Did you have a plan mapped out?
When I was 15, I wrote down on a book that I was going to have 15 karate studios.
Well, we better get going.
I circled different parts of the map in the United States where they were all going to be located. No game plan, nothing more than just an idea to put that down on paper, but that was it. When I was probably in my early 30s, I'd come to an understanding that I was dyslexic, and I'd been observed and tested for all kinds of different things when I was a kid because I was having some learning challenges. And I don't recall them ever testing me for dyslexia, but they tested me for everything else under the sun. Long story short, I had a really difficult time with school growing up, and looking back on it, having transposing numbers would make math a little harder because you can never come up with the right answer, right? But I just didn't know that. So my desire once I got out of high school was to never be in school again. Mm-hmm. But yet I've never stopped studying or learning. So I'm constantly reading and just doing it kind of in my own way, picking the subjects that are of interest to me instead of having the ones that are force-fed down me. So that was kind of it as far as the education goes. But I've been pretty passionate.
Fortunately, I'm good with numbers.
Yeah, there you go. The balance is out, right? Yeah. So that was, I did the college part never really inspired me, but just kind of increasing actually looking back, had my mother known that when she was making karate payments when I was a kid, that she was actually paying for college, because obviously that's what I became my profession and has provided for me. So anyways, that's kind of that was my pursuit in a nutshell. Didn't really want to do that whole karate or college thing.
I'm with you. I've had conversations with a lot of people lately, and one of the questions I asked about college was, did you feel like you wanted to go to college, or did you feel like you had to go to college? And so many people told me I felt like I had to go.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't really a desire. They felt like that's what you do. You go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, you work a 9 to 5, and you go do your thing. And you know, I grew up with a stay-at-home mom. My father was in construction, worked his tail off, you know, every day of his life, and still to this day works harder than most at his age. And I watched that as a kid, and I know that that's where I learned my entrepreneurship, and that, you know, I could be my own boss. I never had any aspirations of going to school. Never wanted to go to school after high school because I quite honestly hated high school. But ended up going to a 2-year, went to Moore Park College here locally. And the only reason I went is because my then girlfriend, who we had just gotten together right after I graduated, she's like, I'm going to Moore Park. Why don't you sign up for some classes? I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go to college because I can hang out with her more. Right. Well, flash forward a couple more years, we graduated from community college together, and then we transferred to Cal State Northridge. She ended up completing her degree in psychology. I dropped out after 6 weeks and opened the martial arts school. And by the time my daughter was born, my wife had given up her career and said, we're just going to run the martial arts school. I think when I was, you know, 16, 17, right around the time I was earning my black belt, I had thoughts that I wanted to have my own martial arts school because I knew I wanted to work for myself, and I knew that I loved martial arts. And I thought those two things would go really well together. And fortunately, it worked out. It worked out. But I didn't really have a plan. Like when I opened my school, no business plan, no savings account, nothing, no backup plan. Right. And I just went. And I think sometimes that works well, because when you don't have a backup plan, you got nowhere to go but forward.
It's not unlike the conquistadors that hit South America. The captain sent a few guys out in rowboats to burn the ships. They say we're conquering everybody or we're going to die trying, because that's our ride home and it's burning. So,
that's right.
It's the concept. Just gotta light your ship on fire, metaphorically.
Yeah. I think I did that. I think I probably lit some things on fire as well. Being flame, that goes, right?
All
so
right.
Tell me about, so you guys, what age did you guys met up? When you were late teenagers, early?
Yeah, I was 19. He was 28.
22. She said 19, 22. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm 10 years her senior.
Got it. And so now, when did you start talking about opening, or Colin, did you already have your school running before?
Yeah, he had the rec centers, where that tournament was out of one of the ones that he was teaching at. So he was teaching at some of these rec centers. And when I stopped going to school and I eventually ended up moving to Long Beach, I have a little bit of a type A personality.
No.
So yeah. No. So, you know, just relaxing at home, waiting for the evening classes and not being able to go, you know, have a place for ourselves to go train, so to speak. I think, and Colin had this big, huge goal to open this big, you know, super gym first. But so somehow I managed to talk him into opening up a smaller location just so that we could, you know, do privates and stuff like that during the day. More that we all had a place to fight. Because again, there was Raymond and Mike and all these people. We just needed somewhere to get together and fight between tournaments. So that happened in, like yourself, not knowing anything and just opening up a place pretty much to invite people to come and fight.
And Colin, tell me a little bit about some of the struggles of when you first started that school, you know, being that small, you know, going from a rec center to leasing a building and doing your thing. What were some of the struggles that you faced early on?
Well, prior to me even opening and started to teach out of rec centers and you know, I taught at the Gold's Gym in downtown Long Beach for a number of years, but I used to rebuild high voltage power distribution transformers for General Electric. So I made a really, really good amount of money for being 18, 19 years old. And that was a bit of a challenge because I didn't like what I was doing. And I really felt like I needed to be doing martial arts. And a friend of mine, I'm not sure if you know, Tony Satch Williams, he was a fighter from Northern California. Him and I went down to Australia who's been now a 30-year friend of mine, Paul Zadro, who had his first tournament down in Australia. And we taught some seminars, and I was, you know, down there having a good time teaching martial arts. I made a few bucks and was able to pet some kangaroos and, you know, just doing something that I love doing. I came home and put in my 2-week notice and quit my job. And so the struggle started kind of right out of the gate for me, because I had a lifestyle that was accustomed to the income that I was making.
Mm-hmm.
And now I was not making that income.
Right.
So long story short, I went bankrupt. And it was just the financial stress of that whole part of it was something to be gripped at an early age of life, to try to figure out how you're going to prosper through it. And I love martial arts so much that I would have taught it for free. And in a lot of cases I did.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I still was broke, because I wasn't getting back the value that I probably was putting in, because I didn't really care. My classes was supposed to end at, like, say 6 o'clock, and I'd be still on the mat at 7:30.
He still does that, by the way.
Teaching, because
that's why we don't let him teach that many classes.
Because I loved what I was doing. So anyways, long story short, I was driving around in a 1968 Volkswagen Bug, and putting all my pads and everything like that into the back of the Bug, showing up to all these different parks that I was teaching at throughout the week. And
the Volkswagen's a whole story in itself.
Yeah, right. But so the struggles were pretty significant financially, as far as trying to build that. I remember I was teaching at the YMCA, and I remember one month I made $18 in a month. And I don't know how other people find motivation to show up to work on a regular basis, to not like their job and not be paid very much. But I loved my job, but I realized I wasn't being paid very much.
Yeah.
Which was a pretty significant trade-off. So anyways, we got the actual studio started, a physical location where we could combine a few of the parks and bring some of those students in. It built pretty quickly, actually. I think I was pretty surprised at the amount of the new students. We started, I think, with maybe 35 or 40 students, and it wasn't long before it was, triple that. And still wasn't making a ton of money, but we were paying our bills, having fun. And like she said, we were traveling around the world, competing and fighting, and teaching seminars. And it was just, life was good, not a lot of responsibility, no kids. So yeah, good stuff.
I spoke with someone recently, a similar situation where they had a really great job. He was an attorney, I believe, just making plenty of money, right? Doing real well, but he just didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy being away from his family. And he switched to being a health coach, and he really enjoyed that. That was more fulfilling in his life. And I just think that, sometimes it goes back to the whole, did you want to go to college, or did you feel like you had to go to college? That kind of thing. And the one thing that my parents always told me is, find something that you love to do and that you can get paid for it. And that just kind of stuck with me. And I loved martial artists like you. And there were definitely times where I was sacrificing, my income for what I love to do. But sooner or later, that passion really kind of takes over. And then people are attracted to that passion. And it's no secret. It's no accident that your school built very quickly, because if you're passionate about what you do, it's very contagious. And now your students are loving it. And as I understand it, you have several students now who have then gone on to open, their own schools as well, which is a huge testament to your passion. So I think that that's amazing. And as just kind of a motivation podcast, if you will, I just don't know how people do it, man. They go into a 9 to 5 on Monday, and they dread Mondays. People ask me oh, I can't wait till Friday. Aren't you excited for the weekend? I'm like, the weekend's the weekend. It's honestly another day. I don't look forward to Monday or Friday any more than I do any other day, because I'm going in to teach. I'm going to get some time with my family. I got a great business. I love what I do. I don't really care what day it is. I just, that 9 to 5 mentality is really hard for me to understand. And for those of you that are watching, if you feel like you're stuck, right, you're not stuck. You're never stuck, right? It just takes one step to kind of move in a new direction. But you guys, you started this school together, right? And it built up really quickly. I did want to ask, why the Power of One? Why that name? Because I know Tara said she loved the book back in the day, but why was that the name that you came up with?
It was all stemmed all from the same thing, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how it all worked out. I had never read the book, The Power of One, before I chose the name for the business. And I was actually heading to that. I told you about going down to Australia to teach some seminars with a friend of mine, Satch, and I was driving by a movie marquee, like a movie house marquee, movie theater, and the movie with Morgan Freeman had just come out called The Power of One. And for anybody who is listening that knows Satch Williams, he's a dark-skinned black Nubian guy. I'm a white guy. The first book I ever read in my life was on the, like, that I chose other than See Spot Run, was on the yin and yang, and between the white and the black and the balance that it created. So let's just call our little seminar tour in Australia The Power of One. Well, we did it. I came back. That's when I quit my job, and I actually used that as the name. But you know, it's a personal belief that we are really all from the same source. We're all part of the one, and we're all working together, or we should be, if nothing else, working together for more of a common cause. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with humanity, is that there's so many people out for me, myself, and I, instead of us and we, that it becomes, there's so many ways for everybody to win all at the same time. But I think there's a scarcity mentality out there, and one that is, that has lack and limit within it. And as a result of that, I think people start to pursue things with the idea that I must get more than you, and therefore, because there's just not enough out there. And so I think collectively, that power of one has got a few different ways that you can look at it, but any of the ones that I think between what her own personal belief and mine, they're kind of hopefully messages that we get to share with students over time, you know, just to just be better people and not be so selfish. If that makes sense.
If you haven't read The Power of One, I definitely recommend it. Hey, Mr. Escobar, long time.
He's watching, and he'll be on the show in not too long from now. So just want to give a shout out to Joey Escobar for watching.
Good to see you, sir.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I mean, I love everything that you just said. You know, once again, we went back and we said we're not going to talk about politics, but isn't that the problem? Isn't that the problem? Is that so many people are focused, like you said, me, myself, and I, and not on the we and the us. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, like, I've seen it forever and a day, and I still see it. You know, martial arts schools out there that are so territorial. They are, you know, that scarcity mindset, right? It's just like, man, martial arts is supposed to be about discipline and respect and honor. And sometimes you see it out there. It's just crazy. And I don't know why in our industry, and I've never been really in any other industry, that it's still like that, you know, but it's just weird.
I think a lot of it too stems from, I mean, we all started because of a passion, but we didn't necessarily understand some of the business aspects, or the fact that our competition isn't other martial arts studios. Our competition is the other sports. Our competition is the baseball, the soccer, or the other child activities, or the other fitness places. So I think that's a part of it, that there's just a lack of understanding there, that we're all really working towards the same goal, martial artists, that is.
Yeah. Everybody's getting handed a toolbox as a child with some tools that their parents or their grandparents had put in that box for them. And I think if we all look closely enough, there's some toolboxes out there that probably have a hammer and a bigger hammer and maybe a saw. And they're trying to do, you know, master craftsmanship with a couple of hammers. And it's just, you know, they don't spend a lot of time trying to educate themselves on a different way of looking at life. They're just looking at it through the lenses of the people that may have had that limiting or lack based belief system, and consequently they just perpetuate it. So open up a law firm, open up a karate studio, open up an accounting firm. Everybody feels that if they come from that mindset from the back, they have a tendency to approach their business and their way of life in that same manner. And it's just unfortunately not true. But well, there's a lot of people believing
we can't take away the aspect that most of us black belts have egos, you know, and it's a catch-22, I think, because I believe stepping into the ring, it was important to have that confidence, a little bit, maybe even overconfidence at times mentally. But yeah, black belts have egos.
They sure do.
Egos with the inferiority complexes.
I wasn't going to go there, but
Yeah, well, you brought up a lot of great points there, and you mentioned talking about having the right tools. You start talking a little bit about business. Now, the way that we met was through the Martial Arts Industry Association, through Maya, and through the consulting firm. Now, how long had you been in business before you decided to take the step to get a coach?
Well, we actually originally started with what was that called? It was NAPMA, and it was right before.
It's EFC and NAPMA.
No, but it wasn't. It was NAPMA, but it was right before Steve Oliver took over and then started selling it. Like trying to sell the Maya High programs all of a sudden. So
Right.
we were only in it for a few months, and that was probably in 2008. But it was at that point in that experience that we realized the benefits that we could have, as long as it wasn't somebody trying to sell us their, or what he eventually ended up doing with that program. But so we found Maya, I believe it was in 2010, because our first time going, we had our youngest son.
Now, so that means you had been in business how many years at that point?
Since 92.
92. He did the things. 1999 is when we opened up the actual standalone building. So both of them, it had been a while. We had plateaued, though. I know he says it grew really quickly, but we'd actually plateaued at what we would consider now as a small number. We were making the revenue through after school program and summer camps before it was this big thing. It was just some parents came to us and said, "Hey, we would love our kids to be with you more. Can you pick them up from school and help us?"
Right. And, talking about ego, right? I mean, a lot of times in business, especially the martial arts business, I have found that people are too proud to ask for help. I've been in business for this long, and I'm still in business. But then you start seeing what other businesses are doing and how these other schools are doing it, and you're like, wait, we're not on the same level here. Something's different. And it takes a lot to be able to kind of set that ego aside and then ask for help and then try something new, because I'm just assuming that you had done things a certain way for so long, and you had to change. You had to change the way you did. I mean, and it doesn't change the base of your art and what you're teaching necessarily, maybe just how you did it and how you ran your business. So tell me about some of the things that changed for you right away when you guys took on a coach.
I'll start. I didn't really want any part of that, to be honest with you, because I'd grown up in that old school mentality that you hear all of this thing about these people being McDojos and this people, just giving belts away for profit and what have you. And again, the ego is such a powerful thing, if you allow it to be, that I didn't want to be lumped into that category, or any one of those categories that in my own mind were perceived to be less than the ethical way of going about teaching martial arts. So I basically said to her, I said, I'm willing to let you, you can go check it out and we'll implement some stuff. But if it doesn't work, we're going back to the way we used to do it. And if it does, I'm on board and let's do it. Well, obviously the rest is history, and I was an idiot at the time, and just
actually it was even a little bit more. When I discussed some of the things that I wanted to change, he actually stepped back for a bit and said, "You're going to have to go with this. I'm going to have to step aside." He almost wasn't even in the studio for a couple of years there as we started implementing different things like the upgrade program and the weapons and stuff like that, the different belts. It
was easier not to see it than it was to participate until I started to see the successes that it brought. And quite frankly, this was a paradigm shift for myself that I think it's worthy if other martial arts studio owners are listening to this part of it, if they're not already currently or haven't made these types of changes. That I had probably 40 students, like I said, when I was teaching out of a park. If we have over 1,500 currently active now, and we've taught tens of thousands over the years, that I would have been selfishly depriving so many people of the opportunity to learn at the capacity in which they did, just through my own selfishness of wanting to do it the way that I believed they needed it. And I've heard this being stated on many occasions about instructors stating that they believe that they're the ones that know what their students want, because their students don't know anything about about martial arts. So how could they know what they want? I've come to believe that it is an absolute truth that every human being knows exactly what they want, and they will vote for it by using the front door when they're not getting what they want. And that was a big learning curve for me to go through anyways. So thank God.
Yeah, for sure. I remember walking into my first success seminar back in the day and going, I don't know if I can do this. First of all, it was $1,000 a month, right? Like right off the bat, I was like, I'm gonna pay $1,000 a month. My rent was only $2,000 a month at that time. I was like, why am I going to do this? But when I started seeing, the numbers and how, Mike Metzger is a genius, by the way, just an absolute genius in our industry. And he was able to literally spell it out and point it out in detail. If you do this, this is where you'll be. And from there I was hooked. And not only was I hooked on, the program and how it worked, eventually, just like we all do when we train in martial arts, we love what we are learning so much, and we love what we do that we start teaching what we've learned and sharing it with other people. And so I was fortunate enough to come on the Maya team for over 10 years, where I was able to consult and work with schools. Because like you said, when we teach students in our communities, right? I mean, we have the ability to impact our community in such a huge way. Right. Well, now when I get to teach a school owner how to run a more efficient, effective business, now that school in that area is now attracting more students. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, I mean, could you just imagine if every student every child was exposed to martial arts at a young age and was involved for a significant amount of time, how different things would be? I mean, I just think there would be such a huge impact, right? So being part of the Maya group, for so many years and knowing, how it works, it was, but it was tough. I remember asking my wife, and thank God, my wife was always so supportive and said, if you think this is what it's going to take to get us to the next level, then I 100% support you, and let's just do it. And we did, and we haven't looked back. And we've grown a lot since then. I've moved into other businesses as well. I had a second school for a short period of time. At that time, didn't work out. But other business ventures have come up, and you guys have been successful in not only helping other people to open schools and being involved with that, but you have, as you mentioned, some other investments and some other income from other areas. How has your martial arts school grown and given you opportunities to do other things?
Well, first off, we actually opened up some of those other locations. So they were ours to begin with. But kind of also, as he was talking about, at the end of the day, you want everybody to be able to level up. And it was just one of those things that we felt them running their own location was, a lot of them have been with us since they were kids, at that point. So they eventually, so now they're their own owners, but it also gave us opportunity to see how systems can affect all aspects of businesses, not just martial art businesses. I don't know if I answered the full question there, but I kind of got off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, trying to, I think, helping other people achieve their goals has been personally for myself, and I believe I could say the same for her. It's a personally satisfying experience, because it's become a belief that I've had for a lot of years now, decades now, that there really just is no greater use of your time than to be in service to others while you're alive. And if this is one of the ways that we're in service to other people, by helping them be in service to others, and help provide all those benefits that are available through the martial arts, then that's just, it's time well spent. So it's easy to go to sleep at night because of it.
It kind of goes back to the power of one, the whole power of one concept. And one of the examples is like the power of one drop of water, for example, one drop and the ripple effect that it has. And that was kind of the concept of having multiple power of ones is, again, it can just spread the positive aspect to more people than we could just alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, love it. Well, listen, we got about 5 minutes left, guys. So everybody that is watching, this is your last chance. If you have any questions, comments that you want to hear us talk about before we wrap up, please post those in the comments. Any questions, let me know. But, something we didn't get to talk about a lot, and I know we missed kind of a lot. We could go back and talk about a lot more, but traveling. You started traveling, it sounds like to me, the tournament circuit was kind of the start of the traveling, but you guys have literally traveled the world, and you set up a nonprofit as well. So I wanted to make sure that we touch on that. So can you tell me, what do you love so much about traveling, and what are some of the favorite places that you've been?
You can talk first.
Sure. I think if there's just no greater personal understanding for myself about the way humanity kind of works together, and the differences yet similarities amongst different religious, ethnic, and just socioeconomic groups around the world. We're all out there kind of doing our own little human experience. Some people are doing it on the beach, some people are doing it in the mountains, some people are doing it in the cities, and I don't think I would have had a better understanding of what that looked like as a global idea, because I think most people never travel more than 100 miles away from their home in their whole entire life. And with the odd trip to Cancun or something like that, that's just, a honeymoon or something like that. But to be able to see people interact around the world in their own environments has been just hugely beneficial for my own understanding about just humanity in general. And that's one of the things that I get from it. Don't get me wrong, we travel to places that are visually picturesque. I mean, the Himalayas or the Andes Mountains, or any of the, we've been diving all over the world. So that just between the oceans and the mountains and the lakes and the rivers, that general appreciation for the planet that we live on, I think has only just been intensified by our travels in that regard.
And I think one of the things we wanted to make sure when we got the taste of travel ourselves through competition, because again, both of us grew up in a different, lower financial economic status. So competition and sponsorship really helped us start to see the world. And then from there, we wanted to be able to experience and share that with our kids, because we are so fortunate here in America. So many people have nothing to compare it to. So they really just don't understand. And it was through one of those trips in Nepal, where actually we were already helping fundraise and donate for one school that already had its own nonprofit, when these PTA type mothers tracked us down on this trek for days.
From another school in the region.
Yeah, from this small region. They had no roads to their village. They had no Wi-Fi. They're actually just now getting Wi-Fi, like as we speak, because Colin pretty much threatened to the government that we're not going to continue to support if you guys don't get them some Wi-Fi services. Anyways, long story short, these mothers came to us and they were like, help, we want our 5th, 6th, and 7th grade kids to be able to go to school here and not have to travel 3 hours both ways. And we need some extra classrooms. We need some extra teachers. And and they heard about us on the radio, on the local radio. So it was from that we really started activating the nonprofit and started help create educational opportunities. And our black belts from all the different studios have gone over at different times to check out the new bathrooms or the new computer rooms or whatever new things that we've created. And it's very rural compared to what our kids have here. But yeah, anyways, I think it's been great. As far as favorite trip, I'm going to have to say Kenya, Africa. We camped around Kenya, literally just figured as an American family, we'd figure it out. And we got laughed by local village chiefs and stuff like that as we were sleeping by crocodiles, and woke up with lions around us, you name it. It was crazy. Wow. It was awesome. It was something our kids still talk about. And yeah.
Yep. There's so many beautiful places on the planet. I recommend everybody get out. If you can't see them all, see a few of them. Yeah. Life is short. Happy is good. You should get out there and travel a bit. It puts everything in perspective, especially if you go to any place that's even remotely considered a second or third world country. If you drop your iPhone on the ground and the screen cracks or your microwave stops working, you're not as quick to complain about it when you see how the majority of the rest of the world is trying to just find fresh drinking water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think it's with their kids too.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's awesome. I mean, I've again seen that you guys have traveled with your children and exposed them to all these different things, and that just perspective, right? It just brings a whole new perspective. So, listen, guys, I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing with me everything that we got to talk about today. I hope that everybody watching enjoyed the show. And again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to comment if you're watching this on a replay, and I'll make sure if you have a question, we can get in touch with Colin or Tara anytime. But guys, before we close the show, is there any last minute thoughts, any message that you want to put out there before we wrap up?
Yes.
Happiness is good.
Yeah. Just be good to other people. If you haven't read them, read James Allen's As a Man Thinketh or Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Not necessary for the wealth aspect of it, but for so many other reasons. Find things that you can pursue that are of a higher nature than yourself, regardless of what that might be. And don't eat yellow snow.
And that's it right there in a nutshell. Don't eat yellow snow. Guys, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate you guys. Look forward to catching up in the future. It's funny, we're not too far away from each other here in California, but we're able to do this on a video chat.
No doubt. Well, thank you,
guys.
I appreciate you.
Yes. Well, be well. And I'll keep looking forward to seeing your posts on social media, where you travel next and what your kids are doing. Wishing you guys all the best today and every day. For those of you watching, please go out and be good to each other, right? Be good, be kind. You got a lot of choices in life, and being good and kind is a great choice. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, sir.